Unlock your potential today at skillbakery.com.
Hello and welcome to another exciting video. And this one will be learning how we can make use of GraphQL along with Apollo client to query GraphQL endpoints. First thing that we will be doing is we'll be creating our React project, and that we can do using this command npx create React app and then the name of the project. So here the name of the project is React GraphQL. Press enter. So here our project is now created, and it contains React DOM, React scripts with CRA template packages. Down below you will find the instruction to start it, build it and test it and even eject it. So here what we'll do is we'll be going inside the React GraphQL, and once there, let's clear the screen and install dependencies for GraphQL. So here we are doing two things, GraphQL and Apollo client. Using these two, we will be querying the GraphQL endpoint. Now that we have done this, let's go ahead and create a file inside this src directory, and let's call that file as Apollo client.js. So here within the src directory, we'll have our first file created, and we'll be calling it as Apollo client.js. Within this, we will be specifying two things. The first is the importing of packages. So we'll be doing Apollo client, in-memory cache, Apollo provider and HTTP link. And then we'll be using HTTP link to point to our GraphQL public endpoint with countries.trevorblades.com. So this kind of basically provides you a public GraphQL endpoint which we can use for demonstration purposes. Once we have our Apollo client.js set up, the next thing that we need to do is opening up our index.js file, and here we'll be wrapping our app with the Apollo provider. So in order to do that, we will have to incorporate a couple of things like the client that we have created and the Apollo provider itself. So over here we have included these two things in our index.js file, and here you can see that right now our app is rounded with React strict mode, and what we'll do is we will be simply replacing it as Apollo client provider and Apollo provider, and we'll be closing it over here. Now that we have done that, we'll save this, and we'll then go to our app.js file, and here we'll be creating our GraphQL query. So here we'll be making use of the use query and GQL from our Apollo client library, and then we'll be making use of the data that we want to query. So the data that we want to query is going to be part of the file over here as a const get data, and here this query that we have, we'll be replacing it with the actual query that we will be doing. So here the query that we need is this. So we want to query countries, and we want code name and continents name to be displayed when we do this. Now the next thing that we need is fetching this data. So how we do that? In our app, we'll be simply going ahead and creating a constant. Using that constant, we'll have this news query get data. So news query will point to the GraphQL API that we have, and it will simply return the result accordingly. Over here we have two states, if loading and error. So if data is being currently loaded, it will show loading. If there are some errors, we will get those error messages. And finally we have this return. So here I'll be getting rid of the template that we have over here, and we will be simply replacing it with the result set. So if the data is there, we'll be replacing that data. So here we are making use of some data, but actually we'll have to update this with the actual data that we will get from the GraphQL endpoint, and that will be country related. So here we'll be updating this as well, and you can see that we now have countries information, and within that we have the data.countries.map, and then we are looping through each of the data that we have received. But once that's done, we can just go ahead and use the command that were provided to us. So here, if you remember, we'll have to type npm start, and this will start our application, and you can see the output coming up over here. If I give you the developer mode, and inside the network console, if I reload this page, you'll notice the call that we are making to countries.countries triple blades, and over here that we are getting is coming up over here as GraphQL. So here data, countries, and then code, name, continent, and continent's name is coming up. In the payload, you can see the query that we sent. So it says query, countries, code, name, continent, name. And some internal attributes were also sent along with it. And then we were able to get those data points back. And the same we consumed over here in our method that we have. So we looked through each of the countries data and kind of displayed it over here. So let's revisit this whole thing quickly. And here what we have done. First of all, we created our React app. Then we installed all the dependencies like GraphQL and Apollo client. After that, we created our Apollo client.js file. And within this, we mentioned the GraphQL endpoint, which we will be querying. After that, we went to our index.js file. And within this, we surrounded our app with the Apollo provider and this client that we have. And this we were able to do because we imported these two things, Apollo provider and the client. After that, we had our app.js file, and there from Apollo client, we made use of the use query. Use query is a hook, and this hook is used to execute the get countries. That is what we have over here. So get countries query, and it basically returns three things, and we were capturing them over here: loading, error, and data. Loading is Boolean, indicating if the request is still in progress. Error is an object if something goes wrong, and data is the data returned from the GraphQL query. And finally, we have our render logic over here in the UL. So we were looping through each of the countries that we have, and we were creating li elements along the way, and we had this key attribute set to country.code, and the strong code was there to display the country name in bold, and then the country code and the continent along with it. So that's how we can connect an Apollo client to a React application with Apollo provider and fetch data using the use query component. If you find the video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe.